Hi everyone, it's Adam with the Northern Rose. I'm here at Green Party conference with Rachel Millward. You just did an amazing speech.
Oh, thank you.
With our friend Mothin.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about actually that speech and what inspired it and the story behind how you became involved in politics? Because I think that was a really inspirational part of the speech.
I told a very pre-seed version of my story, I suppose, at the beginning of the speech, didn't I?
Yeah, we don't need to hear.
No, you don't need to hear the thing. But I'm going to start by saying that actually my mum was from Hull and my dad was from Sheffield.
Right.
So
okay.
I'm now in the south, but northern roots. I talked about them, growing up in the Second World War and seeing that darkness across Europe, and then seeing the building the welfare state.
Yeah.
And so, my parents were older than the parents of my peers. Most of my peers had baby boomer parents, and I always noticed the difference because my parents had seen it go from dark to a kind of amazing reform thing, and they understood that you just couldn't bank on progress carrying on by itself.
Yeah.
You have to make history. You have to decide to write it. You have to fight for it, for yourselves and for others. And that's sort of what I grew up in, that environment, I suppose. We were talking about politics all the time and looking at injustices around the world and kind of having that awareness.
So it's really interesting to hear about your parents being very politically active.
Yeah.
And do you think that had something to do with being in the north, or do you think it was more to do with their sensibilities?
I definitely think part of it is just that moment in history. I just think anyone who actually experienced literally watching the welfare state, my mum grew up in poverty really, and then had time as a single mum with my much older brothers when she was totally dependent on the welfare state. And she was actually just, the way she talked to me about that was with no shame. She was just incredibly proud of this country that looked after people when they needed it. And that went in really deep for me. So by the time she married my dad, he was actually doing really well in business, but he had kind of deep socialist principles. So there was a lot of chat about about the goodness of paying tax, about that's how you build a good society. There was a lot of chat about you should be taxing the rich to help the poor. That was just kind of it's just a baseline value. Yeah. And I think it's actually staggering that we have a Labour government that isn't talking about wealth tax, really. Absolutely. And that isn't to make a choice to cut money from disabled people, to keep children in poverty, a Labour government. Yeah. I mean, it's, for those of us who grew up thinking the Labour Party had these really clear values and this really clear baseline, it now doesn't. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think I'm one of the many, many kind of homeless, grew up in the Labour Party people. But I also came into Green Party through an absolute love for nature, and that's kind of a huge part of my life. And and understanding how important. I mentioned in the speech, it's a sort of personal story that in my 20s I actually had sort of quite severe mobility problems and found that in that time, and people probably don't think about this when they think about disabilities, it's incredibly hard to access nature. And I missed it so much. Yeah. And actually it was in the reconnecting after I'd had various operations and was able to, and the kind of being back out in nature again and sleeping out in the woods. I remember it so much. But it was this kind of sense that you're restored and refueled by nature. And so then it kind of went from my thinking about the climate crisis as being eco-anxiety, total panic, I'm a mum, what's going to happen to my kids? That kind of, it shifted, and it just became connecting with nature, serving nature. There's something I can cope with that. That is regenerative. It fuels me as I do it. And then, so coming to the Green Party kind of became quite obvious, because I was it was also, Brexit was a really key moment for me in really just deciding to stand up. I just wished I'd done more. I'd started knocking on doors, but too late. But I just was we could have done more. We didn't. We could have had a grassroots campaign to stop that. We could have at least listened to people and understood what was going on, and we didn't. And we let Farage dominate. So I've got a kind of never again grit. He will not dominate again.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's something I think that a lot of people think of when they think the Green Party. They think environmental protection. But you've mentioned Brexit and other things. So for you, as somebody very high up in the Green Party, what are your key priorities? So you've got the environment, and then what else do you think you stand for, really?
Well, I think the important thing is that you cannot separate people and planet. You can't. The fight for both is one and the same. And it's really about inequality. Mm-hmm. It's the top 1% who are doing that damage to the climate, actually. And they're also extracting wealth that we need for our public services. Yeah. And so it's that. We need to this kind of crazy stretch from super rich to very, very poor just needs to be brought back in, and we all need to live within our resources, but also just much more caring for each other. You know, it's a horribly polarised situation.
Yeah, and you spoke about the wealth tax, and we support the wealth tax, and we've spoken about it a lot on this channel. How do you think it could be practically implemented, and what do you think is the feasibility of it?
No, I mean, my friend who's an economics lecturer in the LSE would like to take quite a long time to talk about ways that you can and can't do it. I mean, there's some really obvious things about property, and certainly we have this kind of council tax system, which is just so outdated. It's like
antiquated.
It's got nothing to do with reality anymore, and we know that property has become a place where people store wealth. So that would be a good place to start, I'd say.
Yeah.
But the principle is, working people are taxed quite a lot.
Yeah.
This is about taxing assets that actually make more money than the work does, and that isn't taxed. So that's what it is. But yeah, I think it's a complicated one to unpack in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I think a key point is that people watching this might think, well, I don't want to pay any more tax.
No, that's right.
But the key point is it's not about taxing working people.
No, really, it really isn't. So it's about, like, you know, if you own, like, you know, half of London, or like a few streets. Well, some people do, like, you know, own vast amounts of property like that, you know, or if you're a billionaire, you can actually rake in £1 million a week by doing nothing. I mean, that's how crazy these numbers are.
Yeah.
You know, the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is extraordinary, right? A billionaire makes £1 million a week by doing nothing. That's what we're talking about. Because the super rich phenomenon has just gone so wild that it's a weirdly massive amount of money in a tiny few people.
And sometimes hard to get our heads around just how much.
No, I actually think there's a real thing. It's really difficult to understand those numbers. It's like, has someone ever told you how long it takes to count Jeff Bezos' wealth or something?
I saw a thing. It was a scale compared, you know, the amount of money in dollars compared to the size of buildings, and it was just enormous, you know.
But it literally takes a few millennia to count the money. If you counted it like 1, 2, 3, you're doing that for a few millennia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I can't, you know, I'm saying it, but I can't quite, like, I've got almost like a picture in my head of numbers, and I can't picture it. And that's the point, is it's wild, and we're letting it happen, and it's so damaging to all of us. And it doesn't have to be like that. And
so there'll be voters out there who are thinking, well, Labour deal with working class issues. Why should we look to the Greens to to address these problems? What would you say to a disaffected Labour voter, or somebody who maybe isn't sure what the difference is between them and Labour?
I would just say, come on in. I mean, we're having a good time. We're now the fastest growing political movement in Britain. We have more members in the Lib Dems as of today. We're on the move. You know, we've got an incredibly dynamic and charismatic leader in Zach who is cutting through, and I just, you know, let's see the Zach versus Farage show. Come on, let's do it. I mean, just come on in. But the point is, we are standing in principle. There is such integrity in this party. There always has been. It just hasn't had the communication of it. Yeah. So we're not, this isn't like new policy land for us. We've got rock solid policy. We've always had very clear values and principles. We're not going to lose them. We're just going to put them into action. So come on in. Thanks so much for your time, Rachel. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people, especially in, say, Manchester or the north of England, about how the Greens can change their lives for the better? I think you should join your local party and have loads of fun. I mean, I think there are people who, you know, it's something really, really great when you join a party, you meet like-minded people, and you sort of have a whole new community. Because ultimately, for me, all this work is about connecting with people, connecting with nature. It's just a great fun thing to do. So, yeah, we love you in the north, and it's growing super fast up there. Great. Thanks so much, Rachel, and cheers, everyone. Thanks.